Or is this okay too? Yeah, this is okay? No mic? Yes? No? Good? Yeah? Oh, really? Okay. But then I can't do my interpretive dance piece. I shall stay here and try and move around a little bit. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for walking down the corridor, rejecting all other sessions and coming to this one. I appreciate you. Woo! Before we go any further, thank you to our sponsors, Capgemini, Resco, Docs42, Curve Digital, Arrow, our Platinum and Gold sponsors. These events are free because of their sponsorship. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be able to put them on and make the connections that we do through them and build the network that we do through them and learn the things we do through them. So thank you to them. And also to less important sponsors, because they didn't pay as much, but still very much loved. So I'm not going to read them all in the interest of time, but thank you to them all, one of which is my employer. So good morning, everyone. My name is Areti. I'm here to talk about adoption of artificial intelligence, AI. I'm the head of professional services at Telefonica Tech, which is a Microsoft partner. I look after the delivery teams that deliver D365 and Power Platform projects within Telefonica Tech. I've worked as a solutions architect before this role, and I've got about 15 years experience in D365 and the Power Platform, mostly on the CE side. I also run the Reading user group, so if anyone is based south normally, do come and see us. We meet quarterly. And I'm also a Women in Tech and Mental Health advocate, but today, on this session in particular, I'm talking about AI adoption because I'm very enthusiastic about where this technology is going, and I'm also exploring where it's going as well. If you would like things like this on your LinkedIn feed, scan the QR code, let's connect. I'll have it at the end as well. It will be lovely to connect with you. So what are we going to talk about today? So the first thing is talking a little bit about artificial intelligence because different people talk about it and they mean actually different things. So it's worth understanding where we're at, but I promise I'll keep it brief. And then we'll go into the challenges that we have with AI today. What tools do you have within the Microsoft stack? What are your options? And then we'll talk a bit about the adoption of it. So how do you decide if you're ready for adopting AI? What does that even mean? How do you create a strategy? What is an AI strategy? How do you govern AI that you're introducing? And then we'll talk a little bit about future predictions as well. What technology is coming in AI and why you should keep it in mind. And then hopefully there'll be a bit of time for Q&A as well. And one person in the audience has seen this session already and he still came to it. So repeat customers, welcome. So brief history of AI. When we talk about AI, a lot of the time, people talk about technology, but actually artificial intelligence is not a technology at all. It's a goal. Depending on who you talk to, either this side of the river or the US, someone different came up with the term. We won't debate that. But it's a goal to actually create machines that are as clever as us, if not more clever than us. That was in the 50s, so this isn't a new concept at all. But as technology evolved over the decades with machine learning and deep learning, and now more recently Gen AI, which is what we are all talking about, we've actually gotten closer to that goal. And at the moment, with most AI models, you couldn't really tell if it is a computer or a human talking to you because they're getting much better and closer to that human experience as well. So they're passing what's called the Turing test, which is this a machine or a human? Can you tell? Why are we able to do this now? Why have we not been able to do this before? Well, it's because of massive amounts of data. We haven't had as much data in order to train the models up until recently. Also, massive computing power, which we'll come back to in a bit, hasn't been there for us, but it is now. And we have now access to the algorithms. So technology has moved on, making it possible for us to do ever cooler things with AI. But it's also been a journey, even in the last few years, if you look at how artificial intelligence capability has grown. It's been very much last year, a year of exploration. We've all kind of mainstream started looking at ChatGPT and GPT-4. This year, we've been mostly executing with Gen AI, OpenAI, O1, and so on. So we have been playing with this stuff to see what it can do. But have we had results? No, I argue. We are still playing with this. And getting return on investment, this is difficult to do. So we are looking at next year plus for getting actual results and benefits from artificial intelligence in a meaningful way. So we don't have artificial intelligence. I argue we have artificial capability, but we will eventually have intelligence. So it's been a bit of a journey. One thing we need to remember that we keep talking about, technology, AI, the cloud, nothing is physical anymore. It's all up in the cloud. It's actually very much down here in big data centers like this one. There's over 8,000 data centers in the world. Microsoft's biggest one is in Chicago. It's 700,000 square feet. That is a huge, huge space to occupy. And there's a big environmental impact as well with these data centers. All of their hard drives need to be changed every 3 years. The energy that they run on, they're very, very power hungry, as you would imagine. So there is a real physical element to this. And especially when you're looking at the energy that it's going to take, Microsoft is looking at atomic fusion tech to address this, the fact that we need more energy to run them. They're also looking at changing the models, making the models running more efficiently. And the reason for this is because if you look at ChatGPT queries, they're 10 times more power hungry than a Google search. It makes sense. They do completely different things, and it's more valuable. But if you look at then the infrastructure in Europe, particularly, we have one of the oldest power grids in the world. So we're getting to a point now where something has to change in order for us to continue to be able to use this technology, particularly because it's probably going to get more power hungry than anything else. So AI is physical. We shouldn't forget that challenge. Let's talk about what challenges we've got in terms of adopting the technology. In terms of it as a technology, what is the issue with it? Well, the first one, we can't really tell in a very tangible business way what is the return on investment that we're getting. Who here is using Copilot for Microsoft 365, for example? Great. Do you think you would be able to explain to someone in monetary terms how much money it's making you or how much money it's saving you? It's very difficult, and that is the problem with personal productivity AI. We'll talk a little bit about the other types, though, in a minute. So there is this inability to calculate the difference that it's making. We know it's making a difference, but it's difficult to articulate that in a way that will get it more investment. The other thing as well is that different people are adopting it at different rates. So some people very much for it, used all the time, love it, can't imagine their life without it. Other people very scared of it, they don't think it's accurate enough, and the adoption rates vary, so the benefits you're getting from it, person to person at the moment, can vary. And the other thing is, especially if you're going for licensed products, it costs a lot of money, potentially, depending on the size of your organization as well, and your budget in general, so that's an issue. And it's also not changing the game that you're playing as a business. It's game varying, I would say. It's slightly varying what we're doing, how we're doing it. But is it completely changing industries? Not yet, but it will. Plus, there is the small issue of the fact that we have a trust problem with it. And what I mean by that is, if you look at Gen AI risks that organizations consider relevant, this is from a McKinsey report, the number one year on year is inaccuracy. So as of last year, we are more worried about its inaccuracy. We're more worried about intellectual property infringement that it might result in. Cybersecurity is going down a bit, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there is real concerns about the value that you can get out of AI at the moment because of the fact that it makes stuff up. It hallucinates. So it's very difficult to actually trust it fully to make decisions for you if the decisions it's going to make are a bit strange. There's also the question as well of, with every technology you introduce, is it a way for something bad to happen? Is it a way in for the bad guys? This is from Microsoft. These are the top cybersecurity concerns. And you can see the standard ones we know and hate on the very right-hand side, but AI ones are very quickly coming in, right? And what I'm very intrigued by is the fact that the response to this is, we know there's AI risks, but guess what you can use to combat it? AI. Microsoft Copilot for Security. I've made it 10 minutes without the C word. So Copilot for Security could potentially be used to actually combat the issues that AI brings. It's a little bit meta for me, but I would love to see it work that way. And research suggests that it can, right? If you look at where we have the most talent shortage, cybersecurity is number one, right? No doubt about it, we do not have enough cybersecurity teams to actually be looking at all of the threats coming our way. But the interesting thing with things like Copilot is that cybersecurity, for example, is top in terms of how much time it saves those professionals. And chances are the reason for this is because in cybersecurity, a lot of the work is repetitive. You have to effectively evaluate threats. So the fact that Copilot can actually do the first line of defense review of threats and only pass on the ones that are really, really needing a human to look at them on actually can make a difference. So potentially we can use AI to combat threats, but also combat the issues that we have in terms of talent shortage. So it's all very interesting. The other thing with this Copilot report is that you need to be saving 11 minutes to feel like it's adding value, which I thought was very interesting. There's something about 11 minutes. If you save 11 minutes, it's great. If it's less than 11 minutes, maybe not. So it's interesting to see whether the things that you use it for actually save you more than 11 minutes or not. It's an interesting one. So in terms of tools then, taking all of those challenges aside, if you're looking to have a go, what would you do? Well, there are co-pilots literally everywhere, hundreds of them. So that's the first place. Satya calls it the UI of AI, which, marketing did well there. So Copilot's great, plus the extensions. This is one option. It's very quick to introduce. You can build your own with Copilot Studio. So it's your data, your logic. It is a managed service. It's fully managed in the stack. And it's a rapid authoring environment. It's all very good to actually introduce and see how you get on. And there's so many of them, literally, as you can see here. There is a huge, huge amount of Copilots you could use. This is one option, and it's a good option. But in a lot of cases, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you may want to look at Azure AI services instead. And that is because if you want complete control, you want to code and customization first. Creating your own models and letting them do the things you need them to do specifically rather than the Copilot solution might be better, particularly if you're looking to integrate them because they have great integration with Git as well as Visual Studio, but they also have a lot of open source AI models in Azure that you could use. So there's a huge amount of capability there. You can see some of the options at the top. It is, though, a code-first approach, and that won't make sense for all use cases. There will be specific AI use cases that you would want to do this for. Speaking of which, your AI solutions that you're looking to implement will probably fall into one of three categories or across them as well. The first one is personal productivity. So ChatGPT Copilot for M365 Windows falls into that category. We are very much getting used to this now. A lot of people have at least had a go, if not using it very regularly. And that's because it's easy to adopt. When you look at commercial use options like the Copilots in D365, or if you're looking to do your own AI development with OpenAI or Copilot Studio, this is where you're actually looking to enhance what your organization is using AI for. This is great, but it leads to higher organizational impact, not as easy to adopt because the chances are it will take you longer to implement in a way that it actually gives you value. So there is this continuum at the bottom of easy things to adopt, less easy things to adopt, but higher impact potentially. What is worth remembering as well is personal productivity, not as easy to measure return on investment. If you're spending a lot of money creating something custom, you absolutely want to measure that the problem that you're solving is actually being solved and what actually ROI are you getting from it. So depending on which way you go, the one thing to consider is that easier things will give you value quicker, more difficult things will give you value later. And Gartner here expects that if you're going for quick wins, where the deployment cost and the complexity and the risk is a lot lower, but the value is also lower, in less than a year, you will be getting benefits from that. But the more complex things you try to do, it could be 1 to 2 years, or it could be more than 2 years by the time you're actually getting value out of that. I don't know how you define value in itself. It doesn't have to be return on investment. It could be productivity gains. It could be other things. But the idea is that you have to consider as well when implementing something, how long are you willing to wait for it to really be making a difference? Which brings us to readiness. Are you actually ready in the first place to start looking at this technology? And Microsoft recommends that every organization obviously looks at it, but they will be at different stages of AI readiness or maturity. Exploring, few organizations are at the exploring stage where you're looking at what AI is, what it can do for you. There is also obviously then the planning stage. Once you have looked at it, you start to plan how you're going to try and use it. Then you try to use it. You implement it. The majority of us are there. We are implementing this. But less are scaling its use across the organization, and very few are actually realizing true value across the organization, because that can be hard to do. The interesting thing with this is that the majority of the ones, well, more than half of the ones that are realizing value at the moment, were cloud first. So it suggests that organizations will move to the cloud if they haven't already in order to make use of this technology in the future. None of this is particularly surprising, but what is interesting, and this is from Forrester, is that different industries will have different use cases, and this is for Gen AI as an example. So how quickly you adopt new technology will also depend on whether your industry is good at change and adopting change and actually looking at new things and experimenting with them. Because this technology is by no means a ready product. It is definitely experimental. It will give you different answers. You can't predict what it will do. So public sector tends to have a bit more of a perhaps hesitancy to adopt, this suggests. Not that healthcare doesn't, but I think it could be regulations in the industry, compliance checks that they have to go through that are making it difficult with something that isn't actually easy to predict its behavior. So it's worth considering this as well. And then there's the fundamental question of your organization. How willing are they to play with stuff to a certain extent? And you'll have 3 different levels of this. People that are looking to pursue the productivity of it, so front and back office, you're targeting it cautiously. You can have an internal only, where you are happy to use it internally within your teams, but nothing to do with your customers. Or you might be looking at wherever you can make a gain from it. If there's a benefit, you will look to use it. Gartner has a very nice radar of this, where you can actually look at all of the different ways in which you could use AI. And it goes from everyday AI all the way to game-changing AI with your internal operations and external at the top. And the idea is that you look at all of the potential things you could do, and then you decide what the important ones are. Because there's so many different things you could do, you do need to prioritize the problems that you're trying to solve. You can't just go at everything all at once. No team of people can handle all of it all at once. Which then brings us to the strategy. Well, if you're looking to adopt AI, what are you going to do with your strategy? And what is an AI strategy? And there are 5 key principles that it should address. And the first one is, what are your data gaps? Because all AI is based on data. If your data is not great, your AI model answers will not be great. The value you get from them will not be great. So data is becoming more important than ever with AI coming into the mix. You also need to identify what problems you're trying to solve in your organization. Is it actually going to solve for all of the people that are having the different problems that they have in their roles? And do you have people internally that can help others use this technology? We all know a person in the organization that is absolutely terrified of AI, will not use it, doesn't trust it. They think it's going to take over their lives and report them to God knows where. And they just would never do it. You need champions in the organization to say, this is how I'm using this is the difference it's making for me. Oh, and look, I created this cool thing with it, or it allowed me to do X, Y, and Z. Because that will really drive adoption of it. And then reskilling as well, depending on how complex what you're trying to create with AI is. There may need to be an element for your internal teams to actually get them more skills on AI, whether that is managing the model, managing the data, developing the model. There will be an element of reskilling to do. And also, what new habits need to be developed? Are you fundamentally changing your business processes with this? Are you actually going to be doing things completely differently? So yeah, there you go. Don't know why that all appeared at once, but the only other thing I would add is that you need to also, in my opinion, this is great, but you do need to give guidance on how do people bring their own AI to their roles and their jobs, because anyone can go on the Copilot website and use it to ask a question. Anyone can download the AI solutions on their phone. So people will be bringing these things in and trying to do things with them, regardless of whether we allow them to or not. So there needs to be guidance on that. And also, how are you going to measure the return on investment, whether that is monetary or non-monetary? And you also need to frequently review this strategy. You can't just say, this is what we're going to do now, and then never change it. This technology, as we'll talk about later, changes very, very quickly. So your strategy will need to adopt with that, and also with the way your organization is facing its own challenges with it, potentially. There are 5 AI value drivers. I'm going to click this again to see. There you go. So the first one is business strategy. So you need to make sure that you have a clear investment plan for AI, because there's no point effectively paying for something now that you don't have the budget to continue paying for later if it is a good solution for your organization. So there needs to be a bit of planning from a business strategy perspective, and that the tools that you're looking to use are actually in line with what you're trying to do as a business. If a business says that their strategy is AI, their whole business strategy is AI, I sincerely would question that. They had a reason for existing before artificial intelligence came along. Artificial intelligence can't be your whole business strategy. It's a catalyst to make that strategy happen. What are you trying to do? And this will help you do it. The other thing is your technology and data strategy. Where is your data? Do you have enough infrastructure if you're going to have your own AI models as well? It's the engine that's going to run everything. Do you have the right inputs to make this work and support it in the future? Your strategy and experience. Do you have the right skills in your organization? Do you know enough about artificial intelligence and its solutions to know when to buy and when to build your own? That's something that you may need to build on. And then, is your culture ready? Are you a data-driven organization? Do you believe in the fact that this can actually help you make better decisions? Do you trust it enough? And do you have enough leadership support in order for that to be introduced and driven in the organization? And the other thing, which we'll talk about in a second, is the governance of it. Everyone remembers, I'm sure, when Power Automate Flows came out and all of the traditional workflows we had in D365 turned into cloud flows, and then there were so many of them, no one knew what they were doing, why they were there, what connectors they were using, what decisions they were making. I think with AI models, we are kind of heading the same way, so it's important to have a actual record of what AI you have where, what models, what are they doing, what's the reason for existing in the first place, what problem are they solving. So governance, general good practices. Artificial intelligence technology is like any new technology. If you're looking to introduce it, you need to make guidance available, not just for your devs, but also for your end users. What models are you allowed to use or not? So for example, facial recognition. Do you want to use facial recognition? How do you want to use it? When is it allowed to be used? Because it won't always give you the answers that you need. So it's important to have that human review of it as well. An AI inventory, as I was just saying, you need to know what is where. So having a centralized view of that is really important to keep control of it. And also having tools where you can monitor how these models are being used. Are they being used and for what? That will help you measure the return on investment, but also make sure that the solutions you've implemented are actually making a difference to the people that they're supposed to be helping. And the final one is the big one, really, for me. Are they secure and are they compliant, particularly when it comes to cyber attacks or sharing the data? If an AI model is free, you are the product. What are they doing with your data? So it's very important to consider this as well. Microsoft themselves talk about responsible AI practices, and they talk about what you need to consider if you are looking at implementing an AI model. It needs to be fair. It shouldn't be biased. It should be reliable and safe to use. It should be taking privacy and security into account. It should be inclusive to all. It should be transparent. Everyone should know how the model works, how it makes decisions. If your HR team decided to introduce an AI model to decide whether you get promoted or whether you get a higher salary, I'm sure you would want to know how that works. So transparency, it's very important for people to understand how models work and what their limitations are. And also be held accountable. And by that, in my view, it's about making sure there is a human responsible for ensuring that the AI model is reviewed and the decisions made based on AI are actually reviewed as well. So someone is accountable for making sure there isn't an adverse effect of using AI. This is all good for me. I add two more, which, come back. Scalability and sustainability. For me, if you're going to introduce AI, it needs to be scalable within your organization. If you're going to be getting bigger, more people are using it for more reasons, the model needs to be able to handle that. You don't want to have to change models, and all of that investment goes out the window. But also, how sustainable is it for the future? A lot of people at the moment with AI models get very frustrated with all of the upgrades they have to do all the time with them and having to constantly change, the models are changing in themselves. There needs to be that sustainable element to it as well. Are you picking the right model to take you through the foreseeable future? Microsoft, in terms of governing all of this, has a very interesting structure. This is very heavy for most organizations because they won't be implementing AI in the way Microsoft does, but they've got a leadership team, they've got an Office for Responsible AI, and they have a committee that looks at tricky AI cases, sensitive scenarios where they have to make decisions. And they all work together to make the right decisions in terms of policy legislation, the direction that they're going. Now, this might be a bit heavy-handed, but the one thing that I like about it is that they make everyone responsible at Microsoft for ensuring that AI isn't used in a bad way. And I think that's a key takeaway from me, that everyone needs to be aware of what responsible AI is and its limitations, escalating issues where someone is using it in a way they shouldn't, and contacting their champion if they need guidance. I think that's all really good. And look how happy they are. Can't be a bad thing. In terms of governance structures, whatever you have, an AI office, a committee, some of the bigger organizations now have chief AI officers or an ethics board, whatever you decide to have, make sure someone is actually looking at, are you compliant with your regulations and any actual legal restrictions your industry has? Is your system performant and what are the outcomes? Have you done risk management on unintended consequences of introducing AI? Are there any ethical implications to what you're trying to do? Is there social impact or expectations? Is it going to be perceived in a negative way? And organizational readiness and adoption. Do you have the structures in place and the strategy so that people know what they're doing, how they're doing it, how are they going to use it, and who's going to support it? So let's talk then finally about the future, because the future has some really interesting trends. This is from Gartner. Gen AI is here at the top, falling nicely into the trough of disillusionment. We are tired of talking about Gen AI and AI, right? Basically, we are done with it. If we were dating it, we would be ghosting it. So that's kind of where we are. As you can see, though, from a general artificial intelligence landscape, you've got quite a lot of things coming our way in the next few years. And some of the interesting ones, obviously, responsible AI, we're at the height of that. We want to make sure that this thing is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But you've also got prompt engineering being very high up there at the moment. And then you come down and you look at things that will come up in the future. AI-ready data, decision intelligence, quantum AI, obviously, is a big one. So there's a lot coming our way that we need to keep in mind. Gen AI is obviously top hype at the moment, but there will be life after it. So it's worth making sure you don't get swept up in Gen AI and not think about what's coming up. So all of these things are going to evolve over time, and there will be better solutions. And if you look at any one of those, like Gen AI here, there are trends within each one of them. So when you look at Gen AI, there are things like immersive meetings, no-code platforms, bidirectional brain-machine interfaces, an AI avatar of the employee, exoskeletons, my personal favorite, down the bottom left there. So there is a lot, right? There's a lot coming our way, so we need to make sure that we're keeping track of what is coming, because it will fundamentally mean new opportunities to do things in a different way. And if you look at the predictions for the next few years, next year, the expectation is that 30% of projects will be abandoned, actually, because they are either the data isn't good enough to run them, so they're not getting actually the results they want. There is not enough risk controls in place, so they are actually a risk in having them. They are getting more expensive, or the value that the business is getting out of it isn't clear anymore, so they're just going to be thrown in the bin. At the same time, though, there are areas where we are looking to use AI more because the ROI perhaps is a bit clearer. Things like development and testing strategies is an example of that. Then you move a year further, 30% of new apps will use AI to give us a personalized UI experience. I'm all for that. And synthetic customer data comes into play. That a lot of businesses will be using AI to create synthetic data. For those of you that have not come across, who hasn't come across synthetic data? Wow, you guys are clued up. So synthetic data is effectively data where all of the personal information is taken out of it. So if you have a customer database and you want to use that customer data to make business decisions or analyze it in some way, you may have GDPR issues around that. There may be consent that needs to be provided that could be taken away at any time. The idea is that you can use AI to actually depersonalize that data, but still keep it statistically correct with the relationships in place, so you can still make the right decisions, but you can't tell who your customers actually are. So it takes away that complexity. We use it at Telefonica Tech to look at what our customer trends are. So it is very useful to have. And it's also because AI can create more of it, so you can actually create a lot more data sizes as well, which is good. Robo-colleagues, don't know how I feel about that one. Basically, the idea being that there will be, in my case, an Areti bot that will do the boring bits of my job while I get on with the more exciting bits of my job. I'm all for trying it out. Not sure how that's going to work. Yeah, we shall see, but apparently it's coming. And then sustainability in the next couple of years is going to really kick in, according to Gartner. So CIOs will probably have their compensation linked to having sustainable technologies and using sustainable technology. The one that is interesting as well is that 15% of new applications will be AI generated with no human involved. Now that scares me. And more than half of the models will be industry or business function specific. I think this is already happening. The way I think we're dealing with the inaccuracy is by creating business or function or industry specific models, because they're a lot better from an accuracy perspective, an IP perspective, a security perspective. So I think this is actually happening now, but apparently adoption might be a couple of years away, which is fair enough. But I think that is the solution to the inaccuracy, is making the models specific. Fast forward another year, any large AI models being built right now from scratch will be decommissioned, because by 2028, went back in time, 2028, they will be technical debt. The technology is changing so quickly that the cost of them, the complexity of deployment for them, it will just be technical debt. So they will be abandoned and replaced with newer tech. So something to consider if you're looking at introducing AI solutions now. When do you expect them to become technical debt, and how are you going to deal with that? And also the fact that AI coding assistants will be used by 75% of devs, I think that's going to happen way sooner. Devs love playing with AI and someone else writing the code, finding the bugs, fixing them. Why would you not? I think this is going to happen a lot sooner than then, personally. And the other one, which is a big one, is machine customers. Who has heard of machine customers? Put your hand up. Ah, okay. So machine customers is the idea that a human being will no longer purchase anything. An AI model will, through an API, purchase something for you, and another AI model or API will buy it for you and deliver it for you. For example, you run out of milk, your fridge will order more milk for you. Your printer runs out of ink, it will order more ink for you. Things like that, right? You won't have to go to the supermarket anymore, is the good news. I don't know if that's good news. Depends on whether you like supermarkets. But the idea is that a human being will no longer make the decision. There will be parameters given, and off machines will go and order from each other. Obviously, this will have a massive impact, because at the moment, the whole of sales and marketing practice is about influencing human beings. How do you influence an AI model? I'm dying to find out. We'll find out. But what this means is that 20% of websites will no longer need to exist, because a human being won't visit them to purchase anything. And they will be completely obsolete. And by 2030, the expectation is that for all companies, about 20% of their revenue will come from machines buying their products, not humans. Blows my mind. And finally, synthetic data is very, very big by 2030. All of the AI models by then are actually not using real data anymore. They're using synthetic data. So AI models using fake data, but not real depersonalized data, I should say. So most of them are using that. It means that the cybersecurity concerns potentially for AI models by then will be a lot less, because if they get hacked or the data is used in a different way, at least there isn't a personal element or an issue with customer data, because it's not really customer data, it's all fake. So yeah, things to keep in mind for the future. So in summary, if you're thinking about AI adoption, what do you need to consider? Microsoft has a lovely checklist which has only 5 things on it, which I am not against. However, I have 10. So my first one is, why are you doing it? Make sure that whatever AI solution you're looking for, it aligns with your goals. What problem are you trying to solve? The second one is, do you have the right data quality and availability of the data? There is a bit of a hidden cost in introducing AI, in getting your data in shape and getting your data ready to be used by those models. Have you got that time set aside and that resource set aside? Have your teams got the right skills and training to actually make the best use of this and make the right decisions about it? Have you considered ethically whether what you're looking to use AI for is the right thing to do? Are you integrating them with your existing systems? We all have existing infrastructure and architecture within our organizations. We introduce this. It's not going to work in isolation in most cases. So how is whatever you're looking to introduce going to integrate? Is the capability there? If you're a Microsoft house, the answer is fairly simple on that one, but you still need to think about how you're going to integrate and why. Security and privacy, the obvious one. Locking down what people can do with AI models, who can introduce them, where can they introduce them, what data can they use, all of that needs to be considered. And can you actually use them in the future, or will they become technical debt very, very quickly? Can you scale them? Are they flexible to change? If your use cases and your requirements change, will you have to look at a completely different model? Will you have to start again? All those things need to be considered. And the almost final thing here is cost and ROI. Have you got the budget to continue paying for the cost of this? And do you have the processes in place to make sure you're getting a return from it? And change management often gets forgotten. The fact that humans will be using this and we need to be change managed. So the fact that we actually need to be educated on why this is good, why it's going to make a difference, how are we expected to use it, and what can we expect to make out of it. And constant feedback, for me, is the last one, right? You need to have the ability to get feedback from the people using this technology and constantly reviewing the strategy, the models, how they're being used, the data that they're using, the decisions that they're making. So obviously this is a lot. So if you want the TLDR version, it's a burger. Bear with me, it will make sense. You start with human input, you end with human review. So whatever you decide to do with AI, there needs to be a human that says, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. There also needs to be at the end the human that says, yes, this AI model is working in the way I expect it to. We won't have adverse consequences here. You throw some yummy AI stuff in between those two. Whatever you decide to use is up to you. It can be halal, it can be veggie, doesn't matter. Loads of AI models there, pick your favorite. But what you need to remember is it rests on your organization and your culture, which in this case is the lettuce. So you need to make sure that you have in place the right things in your organization and your structure to support what you're introducing. Otherwise, it's not going to get you results. Smother it with business tech and AI strategies, ideally, as well as AI governance. How much is up to you, but I suggest quite a lot. But the thing to remember most of all, really, is you don't have to eat it all, and you don't have to eat it at all. And what I mean by that is AI is changing so quickly, you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, is there any point in me looking at AI right now because it's going to change? Very valid, right? I would recommend that it's a learning curve for people. So introducing it a little bit right now definitely helps people get their head around it, literally. But if you start looking at AI and it's not working for you, or the model you've chosen isn't the right thing, or you've gone with Copilot but you need to go code first, or you've gone code first and you think you should go simpler, we need to make it okay to make those decisions and fail, so to speak, try something and have it not work and do something different because the technology is changing all the time. Some useful links. I will put the slides up, but do connect with me on LinkedIn as well. This is all of the things that I find very useful because there's not enough time to talk about accessibility, responsible AI, AI tools, but these are some great links there where you can find out more about it. Copilot Lab Prompts is great as well for prompting Copilot. I try to break it all the time, which my IT team are very happy about because I get questioned on it. But I asked it once and said, I love someone and they don't love me. What should I do? I like asking really weird questions and no one's probably going to ask it. Okay, I ran out of ideas. And basically, to save you some time, not that you would ask it this, the answer came back, gardening. I was like, great, I'm off to my garden to plot something. Thank you very much. Here's the QR code if you want to connect. We have 5 minutes plus for questions that I'm very happy to take. Who would like to ask the first question? There must be questions. Or if you want to share what you're doing with AI at the moment and how you're finding that experience. Andrew.
From the keynote yesterday, it was quite interesting, the highlight on the non-deterministic nature of generative AI. So how do you deal with that in a business scenario where you're not going to get the same result twice in a row, perhaps?
Yeah, it depends on what you're using it for, right? Sometimes it's okay for it to tell you that you should go do some gardening, but if you can't do gardening for whatever reason. I think it's an interesting one because it comes back to, again, the fact that it's new and it will try its best. You know, as Scott said in the keynote, or as the AI in Scott's keynote said, I can only respond with what I know. And how you prompt it as well makes a massive difference in what answer you get. And I think that's where we need to get better at understanding prompting and understanding the tokens and how actually copilots in this case work, because you will get a completely different answer depending on the question you ask. So if you're using it for personal productivity, the impact of getting something weird back, you can probably live with it, right? But if you're using an AI model to make actual business decisions, or it's making business decisions for you, you need to make sure it's accurate. And that's why we're not there yet, because you can't predict what the answer will come back, will be. So it's too early I think, to use it for that kind of thing, unless you're going for a very industry-specific or business function-specific model, potentially. I think there is one for law now, for example, where lawyers can use AI to basically look at different arguments for different cases and things like that. But I think it's going to take time to get to a point where we trust it fully. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think in the business ones, just the straight answer would be better to have when Scott he changed it to show the probability. So it's like, oh, this is 30, but this is 26, and then the human review maybe I'll use my knowledge to pick the 26% answer on whatever the question was.
Yeah, I mean that could have its own unintended consequences potentially, but it's about understanding that it's answers based on probability, not facts. And I think that's the most important thing for that one. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Trust you found this useful. I will hang around if you want to ask me questions personally, so to speak. You know what I mean, after the session. Thank you very much for listening.